Welcome to this edition of Morgan Asked For podcast. As you can see, we are house divided today. We have local Miami Hurricane super fan Doug DeKock. If you're from Oskaloosa, around Oskaloosa, you know Doug DeKock, co-owner, I believe is what you would say it, of Swim Sports. Done a lot of different things throughout his life here in Oskaloosa. Played for the Indians. And then in college, did play for the Miami Hurricane baseball team. So thought it would be a great time to have him on. We've talked about this for years to be on and finally made it happen. And this kind of made it go. He's supporting his Hurricane Final Four, and he'd already given me crap because they did beat Iowa State on their trip to the Final Four there in Chicago. And I do believe you went to that game.
I went to the Kansas game. The Elite Eight can't. Well, no, I did not go. I went the year before they lost to Kansas.
Okay.
And then I did go to the Final Four the year they made it down in Houston.
Right. You got a friend down there that was able to help you out there a lot. But we do appreciate Doug. Trevor is helping some family. It is Christmas Eve, so definitely understandable there with Trevor. I might have to do this again sometime with all three of us because Doug and Trevor are good friends as well. It would be interesting. Doug, I'll just kind of let you introduce yourself, kind of your background for those of you that don't know. I know people around here do, but we do have people that listen from other places as well.
All right. Well, it's nice to be here, Ryan. Yeah, like you mentioned, we talked about this for a while, so finally made it happen. My name is Doug DeKock. I did attend the University of Miami back in 1987-88, which I know is a long time ago, but when I attended Miami, we were in the midst of a 58-game home winning streak. And I'm going to mention a lot of things here just to kind of intimidate the Iowa State fans as we go. Maybe all pros and Hall of Famers and all that. But anyway, it was a great time at Miami back in those days. As baseball team had just come off a national championship in 85. They also won it in 82. And the football team was rolling. Saw some fantastic games. Played number one Oklahoma in a home game, not the actual Orange Bowl, but we played in the Orange Bowl against Brian Bosworth, and of course the Florida State battles, the Notre Dame battles, and now we have an Iowa State battle.
Right. This will be the first time Iowa State and Miami has ever played, and 58 games in a row. I don't think Iowa State won 58 games in the 80s and 90s combined.
That was pretty tough time for Iowa State. Nebraska and Oklahoma were rolling through Ames and putting up 60, 70 points. And, I understand that. But I think this game's on a lot more equal footing than what people may think.
Yeah, this will be the third time in 6 years that Iowa State's played in this bowl game. And three of the biggest names in college football, they played Notre Dame 5 years ago, I think. And then 3 years ago, they played Clemson and now Miami. And then intermixed there, they did play Oregon. So Iowa State's bowl record in the history of bowls is very poor, and lately is very poor as well. And that's something that I would like to get turned around. But who they're playing is much different than playing Miami of Ohio or Northern Illinois or Memphis or other teams. They're playing bigger name teams, and that's what you want. I believe this game probably will be one of the top rated non-playoff games. Obviously, the playoff games are going to get huge ratings compared to all the others, but your Alabama-Michigan game, I think, will probably be number one. BYU-Colorado is probably number two. And then I definitely think this definitely could be number three. We'll see what it all pans out. Saturday afternoon, 3:30 in Orlando, 2:30 Iowa time on ABC. So it's a good slot as well.
Yeah, both teams will get good exposure from this, but it's a little bit different landscape here with the playoff system, and it's going to be, how do teams react? Do they want to be in this game? And it's always kind of been that way with bowl games. Who wants to be there, I think, is a big deal on these games. And I'll be honest with you, I've followed some Miami pages and on the internet, and they're not real happy about this. And
no, they're super disappointed they're not in the playoff. they have the same issue as the Big 12, where they're not the Big 10. They're not the SEC. Miami lost 2 of 3. They were 9-0. How high did they get ranked this year?
They got
third or fourth.
Yeah, right.
They were right. They were in the playoff.
Yeah.
Up until they lost 2 of their last 3 games. Didn't get into the championship game with 2. I think they had a 21-point lead at Syracuse.
They did. They were up 21-0, and they lost that lead, and then ended up losing that game.
Right, and that was the one. That was the killer. They have a Heisman Trophy finalist. The intriguing part about this game is, and I still will believe it when I see him walk out and actually, even if he's dressed, I'm not going to believe it until he lines up behind center, and not line up behind center more than one series. Because that's what's been said is he's going to play.
Yeah,
he's a top 5 projected pick. You love it. I hope he does play. I hope he plays the whole game. It'll be a much more entertaining game. I think a lot of people are picking this to be a shootout because Iowa State's defense is not as good as their offense. It's their Achilles heel, and Miami's the same way. They can't stop anybody. That's their problem, but their offense is really good. If he plays, I think this could be a shootout, really exciting, and that's what you want to have. Fun game. But until he plays and plays more than a couple series or one series, because that would qualify as playing, I'll believe it when I see it because he is so highly ranked.
I agree with you. And the sentiment down in South Florida is, what is he doing?
Right. I agree.
They're saying that too. Unlike a lot of Miami fans, I do not believe Miami should have been in the playoff. They didn't. I've seen this story for about 3 or 4 years now under Coach Cristobal. They jump out and go 6-0 and 7-0, and then they stumble. So I was just waiting for that to happen against Georgia Tech, and they pulled out 2 ball games that they could have been overturned and lost. So I didn't think they were playoff bound worthy, and the Cam Ward thing, he can move, he's mobile, but I can't believe he's going to be running a lot. I wouldn't think.
You got to protect him. Just almost have to protect him from himself. Those guys are competitors. They want to play. I will say this. I watched a podcast. It was on YouTube, so it's a podcast too, but Cyclone Fanatic kind of did their preview. And Ryan Harklaw, who played at Iowa State when I was there, D lineman, one of the head of Farm Bureau insurance now, and is our sideline guy, was talking about everybody thinks the best thing is to sit out. Well, the best thing for a lot of people is to play. Now, he's in a little different situation where he's a first rounder, maybe top 10, could be the first quarterback taken. Him and Shedeur Sanders are right there. But for most of these players that sit out that are projected 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th rounders, he's like, I don't get that. Because if you go out and he's using Higgins from Iowa State, if he goes and has 10 catches for 177 yards and 2 touchdowns, he might go from a 5th round to a 3rd round. He's not going to jump to a 1st round. But if he goes out here and has a great game, it can only help him. If he goes out and catches 3 balls for 80 yards and no touchdown, that's not going to hurt him. And him not playing, he's not going to drop because of it, but it can only help him. Now, there is the injury factor, but they're still going to get probably drafted. And you're talking not that type of big money for a Jay Higgins, Jalen Noel, compared to Cam Ward, which is millions and millions and millions of dollars before he even plays a snap in the NFL.
Yeah, well, Miami has a little history in this where guys got hurt. They had a number 1 running back, Willis McGahee, who had a gruesome knee injury. I think it was Willis, and they may have had another player that got hurt in a bowl game or a national title game. But I actually went to – Miami has been pretty irrelevant, in my opinion, for the last 20 years. And I was at the 2001 Rose Bowl national championship game, which some people call that the greatest college team ever. They were loaded with all kinds of NFL players, NFL and Hall pros. And they put it on Nebraska that day. But since that time, Miami has not been Miami. And it is really disappointing in South Florida for a lot of us alumni. And I think you can trace some of that back to the president. You know, when a president leaves a university, you don't think about this, but when a president leaves the university and another president comes in that's not that big of a sports person, that can make a difference all the way up to the top.
Yeah, because it is, you don't think of this, but the athletic director has a boss too, and that boss is the president. And Iowa State right now, Wendy Winterstein, it seems to be all in on sports, signed TJ Otzelberger and Matt Campbell to 2032, which coincides with the new TV deals, probably some more realignment. At least, contracts are worth whatever they're worth, but at least they're on paper signed through that time. Obviously, somebody comes and wants them, they're going to go, and someone will pay the buyout. And it's going to be interesting to see all these new contracts. And just in general, coaches aren't getting fired like they used to, because for the first time in the history, they have to pay their help.
Yeah.
And $20 million is, instead of paying a coach $20 million to not coach, or a basketball coach and a football coach, they've got to pay the players. And that's changing. Teams aren't firing. Now, there are some coaches that are quitting and saying, I'm out. So then you got to go hire a new guy. But not as many coaches are getting fired because of the buyouts being so big. So I think these new contracts, all these coaches, the buyout's not going to be near as big as it once was.
Yeah, and the landscape of college football is just changing by the hour. In fact, today it was released that current junior college players get an extra year. I think I just read that.
Yeah, I heard
a couple hours ago. And so if you're a head coach at a major college team, you're actually running a business. And so I would assume they're going to have to hire people that, what I foresee happening is contracts between the schools and the players.
Yep.
So you're going to have somebody or a group of people that oversee all that. What's his contract going to be? What's his contract going to be? It's crazy. It's like a big business now. It's always been a business, but now it really is, changed a lot.
And Bill Belichick coming to North Carolina is kind of a big thing. And he hired a straight up general manager. There's becoming, Wojbaum. He went to be the general manager of St. Bonaventure basketball, which you wouldn't think, whatever. But player personnel departments and true general managers are going to be a necessity going forward, just like you said, because that's not what coaches get into this for. On running a team. Now, I will say, I think Matt Campbell, he likes building a team. TJ Otzelberger likes building teams. That's what they've done. Otzelberger, he recruited for McDermott, for Hoiberg, for Prohm. That's what he tried to get players. And now he's the head coach. And as long as you can get good other people around you, that'll work. And Campbell, before he really started winning, you kind of heard things where and when Dan Campbell got hired by the Lions, they almost said that Matt Campbell was kind of interested in going there as the GM, not even the head coach. So I think Iowa State has the right guys there right now, but they're still, the staffs are going to get bigger and the player personnel. There's people that just, Derek Hooger at Iowa State, he doesn't coach a spot, but he is just their player personnel guy. He's the one that right now works with their collective. And the collectives, this is a misnomer. The collectives are not going away, because that $20 million or whatever that number is coming from the university, there's going to be supplemental money to these guys still, because $20 million isn't enough, because you're going to have to pay basketball players out of that. You're going to have to pay, depending on Title IX, everything, you might have to pay women's tennis out of it. I mean, I don't know how it's going to work, but there is some legal, especially state universities, private universities might be able to get away with a little bit more. Like Miami is a private university, correct? Yeah. So they might be able to get away with some stuff, but Iowa State and Iowa, everything's going to be on the books, and you're going to have to follow all the laws to get all your federal money. And $20 million isn't enough for everybody, unfortunately, because a quarterback now is $1 million or more.
Yeah.
That's the reality of it. And this is why some players are, and the JUCO case is a great thing, but these players are understanding I can make more money in college than I'll ever make in the NFL because I'm not an NFL player. And why can't, I mean, the rules have always been 4 or 5 years to play, but why? That's the question. And I asked this to Trevor, and he kind of looked at me like I was crazy, but why is it 4 years? Well, just because we were always told that.
Yeah.
But why can't you go to college for 6, 7, 8 years? And if you can make $100,000 a year, that's a pretty good life. Well, they'll give you a great start on life.
And a quarterback left after his team was undefeated 4 games, I think, this year, because I don't think he got his NIL money.
Yeah, that was a UNLV guy.
Yeah, I'm going to leave. So, yeah, we've kind of gone off on a little tangent here on this, but I think it's appropriate at this time of the year because it is really changing, and all that talk, that what you were just talking about right there. I don't even coach, but I feel like I want to quit if I was coaching. And that's what's happening is coaches they don't have any time to coach anymore. And I think the first one that saw this coming was Jay Wright at Villanova. He said, I'm out. This is going to get ugly. And he was absolutely right. So I assume someday a new organization will come in and they will start picking teams up, and they'll have the rules all set, and it'll roll into that. But for the meantime, it's kind of a wild west deal out there.
It is. There just needs to be, and guardrails is the kind of the key word there. I think eventually they're going to go away from the NCAA and almost be minor league sports and essentially licensed to the universities. Like the kids aren't going to have to go to college. They're not going to have to pay for a scholarship. They're going to pay these players. Now, if they want to go to school, some of them do. Most of the players actually do want to go to school and get an education because they understand the big picture. But for the ones that, unless they really screw up, are going to get to the NFL or the NBA or whatever, they need to learn life. They don't need to learn geography. You know, they can take courses on how to manage money, do that, which should be part of all of this of college anyway, but it's not, and should be part of high school in my opinion, but it's not. But then you're paying every player so much money, and if they want to, they can pay to go to school and have that correlation, but technically they're not college athletes.
Yeah, it's interesting. You just mentioned something, and I had this happen Saturday night. We were at a birthday party up in Newton, and there was a young man there, and he was pretty tall, and I went up and started talking to him. Well, it turns out that he played basketball at Linville Sully, and he was a junior. And I said, well, did you hear today that about the JUCOs, or, that you get the extra years? And he said, no, I didn't hear that. And the first thing that he said was I could get my master's in 6 years.
Right.
And stuff like that. So what you just mentioned is right. If you're thinking right, you're like, okay, now I get, because a lot of times what happens is you get down with your 4 years in athletics and you're out.
Right.
And in my case, it would have cost, at that time, it was expensive. Miami was one of the most expensive schools. It was like $15,000. Believe it or not, that was like astronomical.
Right.
And so if you don't have your school done, you didn't necessarily get it paid for when you went back to finish. So that is a good thing. And I also think this transferring, and I don't agree with transferring a bunch of times, but it has released really good players that were sitting on the bench to other teams. And we're seeing a lot more parity in the major college level.
Well, the Penn State quarterback leaving in the playoff. Now, Penn State won. Their quarterback's fine, but if their quarterback gets hurt, they're in trouble.
Yeah.
And because he had to leave because of the timing of all this. And it is a game of musical chairs, especially with quarterbacks, where quarterback is the one position that's different because it's one guy and everybody thinks they should start. And if he wanted to go start somewhere, he had to go. And he had to go now. Now, the playoff people do get, let's say Penn State plays for a national championship. Doesn't matter if they win or lose. The players have 5 days to enter the portal. Now, for a lineman or a linebacker or a receiver, There's lots of spots for you. Quarterback, there's only one spot per team. And I was in the – now he ended up going to Missouri, but I was in the mix. Iowa has to – they do know they're going to the portal. That's a whole different argument and a whole different discussion of tampering, whatever. But technically, no one knows you're in the portal till you are. And so they have to believe they got to go get a guy now, not knowing that you're going to come into the portal in a month.
Yeah, and Iowa did get the guy out of Auburn.
Yes.
And there's a connection there. I think that young man is from Wheaton, Illinois, which is the home of Chuck Long.
And Tim Lester.
Yes, exactly. So Tim Lester's friends with his parents.
Went to high school with his parents.
That's kind of how that came about on that deal. Now, the other thing is, and this is where I think Iowa State has an advantage, is the type of player that they recruit is not the guy that's looking to leave.
Right.
He's looking to stay there. He'd love to be at Iowa State for the whole time. And as we saw at Florida State, you can't remake your whole roster.
Right.
And if you can keep a large nucleus together and then plug some people in, you can have continued success year after year. And I think Iowa State has the ability to do that with Matt Campbell there.
What Iowa State is going to have to do, because they're not going to outbid people with money, it's just reality, or with the conference or anything, there's going to be some teams, especially if this JUCO thing becomes permanent, there's going to be teams that just do not recruit high school players.
Oh yeah.
And honestly, if I was coaching, I don't know if I would recruit high school players, because you can find, there's a lot of really good players. We had one right here in Oskaloosa. He's a 7-footer. One of the best recruits in the country, goes to Iowa State, goes to SMU. He's at his 3rd place. You don't know how there is some kids can't handle college sports. It's hard. You're always told you're bad. You're always, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. You're not able to do just whatever you want. You got to follow rules. You got to follow a timeline. You've got to do things the right way. And unfortunately, some people just can't do that. And it's not anybody's fault. But if you get to a JUCO or you get to a smaller school and figure that out, that you can't do it, then they're just gone. And you're not wasting a scholarship for a year or two on a kid, recruiting them from high school.
Yeah. Now, Miami, they have had some big time classes, and I get tired of hearing that big. We got the number 4 ranked recruiting class. I could care less,
right? Because
it's been the same thing year after year. And once again, they got a big time class coming in. I will say, Coach Cristobal's got them a little bit further along down the road. They've taken a little bit of a step. Next year, they need to be in that playoff, and they got to find a quarterback.
Have they signed one yet or not?
They have not, and they're losing an All-American wide receiver and Xavier Restapro. So they've got to find a quarterback, but they should be able to take the next step as far as, and the talent's there. But once again, you got guys rolling out. If they ain't playing,
right,
you got good guys leaving all the time. So, and their schedule gets tougher next year. They got Notre Dame, Florida in the non-conference. And it'll be interesting to see when all this playoff stuff's done. Do they start looking more at your strength of schedule or how many games you won, or what are they going to?
Let's just move to that. I have that written down there as last, but you brought up the playoffs. Let's talk about that, because Miami was really close, and there's a lot of people think they should be in, especially with what happened to SMU. That was kind of the argument. First off, ACC is not the SEC or the Big Ten, so they're always going to be a step behind, much like the Big 12. Maybe ACC is a little bit higher because they do have Miami, Florida State, and Clemson, which are Florida State, Miami, tradition. Clemson, recent tradition. I mean, they're not historic. People do forget they did win a national title in 1980 with Georgia, or right around when they
Danny Ford is the coach.
So they have won before, but historically they weren't great for 25 years. But now with Dabo, they're really good again and made their way in. Yes, they got beat pretty good by Texas, but hey, they had a chip and a chair, as we talk about. You're a gambler. They had a chip and a chair, and that's all you can ask for.
Well, they got that game to 7 points.
Right. I mean, it
towards the
ended up being what it is, but what's happening is everybody, I shouldn't say everybody, ESPN wants more SEC teams in there because it's on their network. They own the SEC. They want all those teams. The best thing that happened was Tennessee getting their ass kicked and just pummeled by Ohio State. Now, I hate Ohio State with the best of them, but that put a smile on my face.
They did get pummeled.
It wasn't never close. The funniest thing is all those guys came out without their shirts on, and then they just got their ass kicked. And everybody's talking, well, should these games be played in the cold? Well, some of these, the game, Texas earned a home game. They earned a home game, so it wasn't cold down there. Penn State earned a home game. Ohio State earned a home game. Notre Dame earned a home game. If you don't want to play in the cold, go earn a home game.
Well, and the weather could have been a lot worse. I actually thought it was pretty decent for the middle of December because you could have had snow,
right?
Sink 10 degrees, not 5 degrees, and it wasn't bad. It was cold, but could have been worse.
And that's where some of these teams, Tennessee, SMU, might have to think a little bit, knowing that they're going to have to travel. They've never had to travel before. All the bowl games are in the South or in a dome or in the Rose Bowl. It's in the Fiesta Bowl. Those have been outside historically. Rose Bowl still is. Fiesta Bowl is now in the dome. Sugar Bowl's in a dome. The Cotton Bowl now is in Jerry World. It's in a dome. The Orange Bowl is still outside, but it's South Florida. Just like I'm going to the game on Saturday, it's supposed to be 78 degrees. We're going to have guys cramping up because they don't know what that is.
What, 78 degrees?
In Orlando on Saturday.
Holy cow.
That's going to be a little warm, actually.
That's going to be nice.
It will be nice. But, yeah, I leave on Thursday early out of Moline, Illinois.
Well, watch out for the drones down there.
Yeah, our drones down there?
They're falling out of the sky. I shouldn't really make a big joke out of that, but they hit a young man, a little boy in critical condition. They do the light show.
Yeah.
And they start just falling out and hitting people. So
I don't know.
It's a crazy world we're in.
Yeah, but so now with all the blowouts, and some of them ended up closer than they were, but they were all blowouts. Everybody wants to reseed it because Ohio State and Oregon should not be playing. And I 100% agree. Both those teams could win the national championship.
That is too bad that should be like one of them versus Boise State and the other versus Penn State.
So, and people are giving the committee a hard time in the playoff. Well, when it was designed, there was 5 Power 5 conferences. So it would have been a little different to start. Oregon would have been in a different conference than Ohio State. They wouldn't have been – they could have both won their league, and then they're not playing. So when it was designed, it was different status than it is now. Now, I don't think Boise and Arizona State probably should get a bye. That's what I would change is if you win your conference, you're into the playoff and you get a home game, but you're not guaranteed a bye. If you're one of the top, they should just 1 through 12, the top 4 get a bye. If you are one of those teams, then you get a bye. And then this last weekend, a game at, maybe Penn State goes to Arizona State. Or how cool would it have been to have Notre Dame at Boise if that's the way it would have worked out?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, or the other thing is how about Oregon sitting back at number 1 team in the country? You don't get that home game at all. You got to go to the Rose Bowl, which is awesome. Don't kid yourself. But now I got to play Ohio State. This sucks.
Yeah, and I
Penn State gets to go to Boise or gets to go to Fiesta Bowl to Boise against Boise.
And I haven't seen this, but I heard that Ohio State is favored.
Yes. So Ohio State is favored by 3.
Oh, boy.
Georgia's favored by 1. Texas is favored by 14 over Arizona State. And Penn State's 11-point favorite over Boise.
Now here's something.
So all four home team or 3 of the 4 teams that
are going on the road
that already played are favored.
And
the only one that's not is essentially a coin flip.
And I listened to Urban Meyer say that he would rather be Ohio State and have played if they got through that game fairly healthy and not having that break. But here's something that I have not heard anybody talk about. Last year, Florida State's quarterback gets hurt, right?
Yep.
And they dock him for it.
Yep.
This year, Georgia's quarterback gets hurt.
Yep.
And I ain't heard a single word about it.
Right. Not that they should. They won the SEC and they should have been in, but
they're not going to have their starting quarterback.
But agreed, they probably shouldn't be the 2 seed.
Exactly.
They could have went all the way. They could have went all the way to the 12 seed where Clemson was and still been in the tournament. That's all. That's all that was required.
I mean, you did it the year before. You told Florida State that, hey, you lost your starting quarterback.
And this is what the committee, and this is as fans of an ACC team in the Big 12, we have to just be throwing absolute fits, and you just cannot stop beating the drum. The name on your helmet matters, and the conference you're in matters, and that should not be. When it comes, you should, a couple teams, Miami should be throwing a fit by not getting in there. I think BYU should be throwing a fit way more than they went to SMU and beat them. And then they had one other loss. They had the same record as SMU. Now, BYU did not play in a championship game, but BYU went to Dallas and beat SMU.
Yeah.
Which
I don't know. I enjoy it, but I also feel that these bowl games, it's really diminished them.
Oh, yeah, it is. And then the other thing that I would do is if you could have this round at home again, the bowl games need to go. This game doesn't need to be played at the Rose Bowl.
Yeah.
This game doesn't need to be played in Atlanta and Fiesta Bowl and the Sugar Bowl. And then the semifinals are the Peach Bowl or the Orange Bowl and Cotton Bowl.
Okay.
Though, which the semifinals and finals at neutral sites or bowl games, whatever you call them, fine. But this round, Ohio State going to how cool would it be to be Penn State going to Boise this weekend or Texas going to Arizona? I mean, that would be.
So as far as, making plans, getting all your travel plans lined up and stuff. So when Tennessee went to Ohio State, were they allotted half the tickets? Because there was a lot of Tennessee fans there.
I don't know what their actual allotment was. I heard there's 30,000 there. In a 100,000 seat stadium, so I had 30%. I do know we got an email because, Iowa State was up until they got beat by Arizona State in that championship game. They definitely could have been playing that weekend and maybe at home. It probably wouldn't have been if they'd have got in. I don't think they would have got to the 4 seed, maybe. But like even us season ticket holders were not guaranteed our seats because of there were more seats guaranteed to the other team than normal. And there's corporate people that, just probably guaranteed a seat, but not your seat. I guess is probably maybe a little bit better worded. Just because there is some corporate money there and there is some more ticket. I don't know how many tickets they get. I did hear that they had to play different things, but I think Miller and Condon or somebody I was listening to had a guy that was at Notre Dame and Ohio State. And they said it was, from what I could see, there was no different. That was a home game. There was no equal music, equal hype video, anything else like that. It was a home game, which was good to see because I was a little worried that they were going to make it a little bit more neutral than it had to be.
So what about this round?
Well,
that's in the Rose Bowl.
Yeah, so I suppose you just go buy a Rose Bowl ticket. Now, each team will always get whatever. And this is where these games should be at home again. Because you think of an Oregon fan.
They got nothing out of it.
No, Oregon, if you're a fan of Oregon and you went to the championship game, you went to Indiana. You flew to Indiana to play in Indianapolis. Go home for a few weeks. Now you got to go to L.A., to the Rose Bowl. Say you win that, and let's just say you go to even the closer one. You got to go to Dallas. Go home, and then the championship game. I don't even know where that one's at. We could look that up, but I don't even. But then you got to.
Might be in Arizona.
Could be. I mean, it could be at any of those spots, but yeah, you're traveling 5-6 times, and then let's say you're Tennessee. Let's go SMU. Let's say SMU because of good travel. They had to go to Charlotte to their championship game. Then they had to go to Pennsylvania. And say they would have won, then they would have had to go to Arizona. And then I doubt they would have given them a home game there in Jerry World. They would have had to go to Miami. And then, there's only the top 0.5% of fans that could even afford to do all of that.
Yeah.
Just, I went to Dallas. I'm going to the bowl game. If they'd have been to the playoff game, depending on when it was, the Friday night game in Notre Dame, if I'd have stayed, that'd have been just hard to get to, just with time off of work and everything. But I would have tried to get to this other game. But then after that, it would have been like, I can't go now. I mean, money runs out. I mean, and I'm very fortunate, and I'm luckier than most. But money's not it. I don't have everything.
I'm eyeballing the Cyclones in the basketball run.
Well, that's the thing too, and that's where
regional final or something like that.
That's where it's going to be interesting how many people are there. And I would not. I'm going to the game because I was already going to go to Florida. I'm going down there. We got to help my uncle, my uncle passed away, and we got to clean out his house and stuff. So I was going there anyway. I changed the times a little bit just so I could get to the game, but I was going to go there anyway. But yeah. So Iowa State fans go to Dallas. They're going to Ireland. I'm not going to Ireland, but I think my dad's going to go to Ireland next year to watch them play K-State. And then our basketball, you're going to have the fans that go to Kansas City because that's just what Iowa State fans do. And then if they get the way they're playing right now, they are a Final Four national championship contender.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean they're going to get there, but if you aren't playing that second weekend, the Sweet 16, at least 2 weekends, you're disappointed now. If you can get that third weekend, that you're right in the wheelhouse. So, yeah, you're going to have relatively close. I'd have to look, but you're going to go to Minneapolis or Milwaukee, which isn't too bad. Last year we went to Omaha. You were there. I was there.
Yeah.
That was fun and not super expensive. You could drive over and come back the same day if you wanted or make a weekend of it. But, yeah, then the next weekend – they ended up in Boston. Well, Boston's not cheap to get to from Iowa. And they lost to Connecticut, and they lost to Illinois. Would have lost to Connecticut the next round. So you're going to travel to somewhere good, and then the Final Four is in San Antonio, which, again, been there for the Alamo Bowl. You can drive that. It does suck, but, again, it's just expense and time off of work, which not everybody has.
Right. Yeah, things are –
and nothing's getting cheaper, is it, Doug?
No, it's
T-shirts any cheaper now?
I probably should charge more for T-shirts, but I ain't been doing it. We might New Year's coming, so we'll see. That's
price increase. January 1, price increase.
That when they had the backup of the ships and everything, I was like, okay, that's a good excuse to do something.
Yep.
Yeah, it's expensive. Miami's run to the Final Four, there was a fair amount of Miami fans in Houston, and that was nice to see. But what people don't realize is Miami's not a college town, and there's so many things to do down there that it's in the entertainment dollar is spread over all kinds of stuff. I mean, you got boating, you got tennis tournaments, you got golf tournaments, you got all kinds of stuff to do. So if you don't put a product out there that is really good, people ain't going to go. Right. So, and they don't have a campus stadium, right, and that hurts too because Hard Rock Stadium's probably, 40 minutes away. So you got to hop on a train or drive up there to go to a ball game. And I'd like to see them somehow squeeze a little. They only need 40,000 seat stadium.
How many people go to school at Miami?
Oh, I think there's probably now, I'm just going to guess and say 35, 40,000. I mean,
so it is a big private university. It's not like 10,000 people.
No, it was, I'm just going off. I think it was 20,000 maybe when I went there, or 15. So I'm assuming it's grown. Central Florida's got 72,000, I think, or maybe more than that.
Right. It's one in
Orlando.
Yeah. It's one of the biggest universities
and the
in the
Gators
country.
Are 70, 80,000. I mean, there's a lot of kids going to school down in those areas. So Yeah, it's a changing landscape. Miami's you think they have it made down there with the sun and the fun, and they did, but it is not that easy anymore because it used to be you were one of 5.
Right.
Now you're one of 20. All the locker rooms are nice.
Right.
All the facilities are nice. Miami's baseball facility, I was down there last February. I mean, it's nice, but it ain't anything better than probably 15 other places.
Right.
And when we played, there was us, Texas, Florida State. We were one of the top 4 or 5 facilities.
Right. Now, as soon as someone opens up a new one, that one's better. And it's just a race over and over and over. And again, that's going to change with paying players. And that's something that Miami, Florida State, Texas, now they're bigger money, but they're going to pay baseball players.
Well, we could go on for a couple hours on that one. That's going to really be affected by this JUCO deal.
Well, and Iowa State doesn't even have baseball as an option to pay. But, the SEC and the ACC, which dominate Omaha, really the only 2 conference, every once in a while a Big Ten team and a Pac-12 team. Now, some of those are getting formed into what's Oregon State going to do now?
Yeah, because they're good at baseball.
Right. They've won a couple national titles, but, like at Arizona State, historically is really good at baseball. Arizona's good. They're joining the Big 12, but then Oklahoma and Texas left. So, but I know Baylor and Texas Tech, and I mean, they're still good baseball in the Big 12, but they're not the SEC and they are not the ACC, which
I don't mean to laugh, but I have to laugh because I'm looking at the notes down here, and this is what we do. We'll sit up the Elks, and then we'll start talking. It'll be just like this.
Yeah.
And we can go off on 100 different tangents.
Oh, yeah,
we'll be here all afternoon.
Yeah. No, that tangents are good. But that $20 million is going to go to baseball at Miami and Florida State and Texas and Alabama. Or is it? Or are they just going to, like, here we have wrestling, which has their own collective at Iowa State and has their own deal at Iowa. It's not even part of the We Will collective or the Swarm. So I don't know what's going to happen with that. There's lots of questions. And yes, baseball is going to be affected, one, by what is the roster limit now that it's changing. Like this is another thing that people understand. Football right now, roughly most teams have 120 kids. It's going to 105. Now, they're going up 85 scholarships to 105. So they're increasing scholarships, but lowering roster size.
Wow.
Baseball is as well.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're increasing scholarships, but I know the roster size is shrinking.
They did increase scholarships, I think. And their thing in baseball was also coaches. I mean, they really needed to add another coach. So yeah, college baseball is really kind of exploding, and it's
fun to watch.
It's going to be a low or a professional A level pretty much, because those guys at those schools they're going to be really good because they're going to have seen guys for years.
Well, they're doing the same thing. A North Carolina or a Miami guy that's playing in the World Series. Well, he played 2 years. I think I saw one guy for A&M or Texas, whoever it was, played at Stony Brook for 2 or 3 years and went there and was an absolute All-American stud. Well, Paul Skeen started at BYU. Just they all start somewhere. Again, they want to see if you can make it, and then you go to the big-time programs where there's more money to be had. And this, but
I didn't get paid.
Well, don't kid I don't believe that for 1 second. Just like Nick Saban talking about integrity, and he even used quotes in game day because he knows it's not right. But it is better to be going to Texas or Miami or Florida State because you fly everywhere, or if it is a bus ride, it's really nice. You're staying at the best hotels instead of baseball, where you're riding a bus from Cedar Rapids to Beloit, Wisconsin to Timbuktu, Indiana. and you're playing in front of more people. You're playing in front of bigger crowds. You're actually on TV. It's a better baseball life, and you're probably actually getting paid more at Texas, Miami, Florida State, Alabama, you name it, than you are at A baseball anymore.
You may see a level of professional baseball drop out. Because you got instructional league, right, and then you got low A and high A, and
use college,
and
more
it
as
may come to that, to where some of these smaller minor leagues. So we probably better get back to that bowl game. And
all right, ultimately the bowl game is the bowl game. It's who wants to be. You brought it up. It's who wants to be there and who has players playing. And again, Iowa State's had one kind of big guy. He just entered the portal on Saturday, one of the D linemen. As long as the players play, and again, we'll all believe it when we see it, Miami has more talent, probably the better team. I'm going to say Miami wins in a shootout like 42-35.
Man, that's I
don't think Iowa State can stop Cam Ward.
That's a lot of points, but and I'll go back. The one disappointment, I'm an Iowa State fan too. People don't understand, when you leave the state of Iowa and you go, even though I go to Florida, I come back to the Midwest or back home, I'm still a Hawkeye and a Cyclone fan for all the games. And this is kind of neat that this is occurring, because it hasn't.
Right.
And my sons actually would have kids over when they were like 9, 10 years old, and they ate all my Pop Tarts. And I was like, you guys.
What is your favorite Pop Tart?
You guys, I like no frosting.
Oh, you got to be kidding me.
Cherry with butter lathered on top.
Toasted or untoasted?
Toasted.
You have to toast it.
You got to toast it, and that melts the butter in there, but no frosting. So anyway, I was going to contact the marketing. So the kids, I said, hell, you guys are the Pop Tart class. You eat a shitload of Pop Tarts over here. And so I was going to contact the marketing of the Pop Tart Bowl last year.
Yeah.
And wouldn't that have been something?
Yeah.
Because they named their group chat at that age the Pop Tart class. And it is to this day called the Pop Tart class. Yeah. And so that would have been quite a coincidence. But anyway, back to the game. When Iowa State beat Iowa, I felt like the second half of that game, Iowa State's defense was phenomenal. And I'm like, man, they're going to be really good, because that defense looked really good. Then I think did they have some injuries?
Yeah, they ended up playing walk-on linebackers. And what's crazy is their defense did not look good, but they actually finished first in the Big 12 in defense still.
Wow. Yeah, they've shown signs of being a really good defensive team. And so I think that's going to be enough to beat Miami. I'm going to take the Cyclones 35-32 over Miami. So that's my prediction. I'm sorry, Cane fans, but I'm not there yet.
Yeah, I hope you're right and I'm wrong, but I do think it'll be an exciting game. I do think it's not going to be 17-10. I don't think that. And it's going to be nice weather. It's going to be, we'll see who plays and everything. And it's just going to be fun to be there.
Miami's speed could give them quite a bit of problems. That could be a difference maker. But I'm going to say that Iowa State's ability to possibly play good on defense is going to override Miami's no chance of playing good on defense.
Right. That's the biggest thing that I've heard, is just Miami's defense can't stop anybody.
No.
So, all right, now let's get to the real heart of the podcast here, and we want to hear some good old Miami stories from the 1980s, when it was truly Catholics versus convicts, that era. Who are the players that you hung out with that we all know? Who on the baseball? I know you've got a great baseball story as well, with who you played behind and who that was, for those that don't know. And then just what the atmosphere and just everything that was going on in Miami in the late 80s, which we all know what was going on, but some inside stories.
Well, and I thought we'd skipped over that, darn it. I was like, I made it through this, but Yeah, it was really interesting for an Iowa kid to be going down to the big city. And Miami was a private university, and I got lucky to be able to go there. So I showed up. I had an El Camino and a moped when I went to campus, and I had everything in the back of that El Camino. And the people from the Northeast, they were like, they did not know what to think about that El Camino. And then when you could hop in the back and ride somewhere back then, they were like, wow, this is super cool. You know, it's like an open air bus or taxi. So I went to school. Jimmy Johnson was the head coach my junior year down there. So Jimmy was there, Dave Wannstedt. They had, I'm not sure if there was a linebackers coach. They had 4 future NFL coaches on that staff. And then you had Benny Testaverde, Michael Irvin, Benny Blades, Russell Maryland. You had all kinds of players. And I played football in high school, and we got down with practice on baseball. And I'll never forget it. It was a Wednesday afternoon, and I wanted to go over and watch a little football practice. So I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden, Jimmy blows his whistle. I want number 1 against number 1. And I mean, you'd have thought they left the gates to the zoo open because guys went crazy. There were no whistles. They just killed each other for a half hour. And I was just over there going, wow. And that's what people didn't understand about that era of football at Miami. Jimmy and them guys, they went and got guys that were hungry. Their only way out was to play football. And those guys worked their butts off. You know, we would lift in the same facility as the football players. And they were, you know, I see why people didn't like Miami. I totally get it, because I'm not for all that hot dogging and all that stuff. And our baseball program was not known for that. Coach Frazier was a first class guy, and that isn't how we conducted ourselves. But Miami kind of started that, and I get it why people didn't like him. But I also try to tell them, you don't get that good unless you work hard. Right. And they worked hard. They lifted, they practiced hard, and they wanted to win and win bad. And so that was one football story that I love. Like I said, I used to go up and watch them play Oklahoma, Bosworth. We were chanting bye-bye Bosworth in the Orange Bowl there. We played against Florida State, Deion Sanders. So Deion also played baseball. And I was catching one Sunday up in Tallahassee, and Sunday games were weird. And we're playing the Seminoles, and they had beat us on Friday, and we won Saturday. And we were in danger of not making the NCAA playoffs for the first time in 25 years. Now, if you want to know a bad feeling, walking to the practice field during the week and might not make the playoffs was not fun. So Richie Lewis beats us on Friday. We win Saturday. Sunday comes, crazy game. It's 11-10. They bring Richie Lewis in, and I'm up with 2 strikes, 2 outs, top of the 9th, and I hit a home run to tie it at 11. We come back around. I'm up, and Richie's still in. I hit another home run. We win it 12-11. They rush us out of the ballpark. They're like, let's go. You can't shower, grab your bags. We got to go. The game took like over 4 hours, almost 5 hours, I think. So in Tallahassee, there ain't very many planes leaving. So if you don't catch your plane, you might be there for another day. Right. Yeah. So they rushed us all out of there. And I don't even know, some guys didn't even change out of their uniforms practically. And we got on the plane, and I didn't realize what I'd done till later. You know, Richie was an All-American, had 17-game winning streak going, I think, at that time. But that was probably the biggest moment of my career at Miami playing baseball. We ended up taking 2 out of 3, and then we had to play them a week later. So my roommate who pitched for the Yankees, Wade Taylor, he says, Big Duggo, he's from Alabama. He says, Big Duggo, you better have your head on a swivel because he's going to hit you. So Richie Lewis was on the mound Friday night, and I was up there, and I don't know what came over me, but he threw that he threw a fastball, and I hit it, and I missed the home run to center field by that far, and I pop up at third base, and I looked at him, and I was like, I own your ass. And I don't know, Richie was a great pitcher, but those were fun times. I also was neighbors with Mike Piazza. Mike, some of you may know, was drafted in the last round by the Dodgers, and Mike didn't play. He was out of Philadelphia, and he didn't play a whole lot because Northern kids, it took Northern guys a little longer than the Southern guys. Southern guys played year round. So, and that was the case with me also. I didn't start 3 out of my 4 years I went to college. I didn't start at the beginning of the year. So it just took a little while for us to get going and catch up because we played 3 or 4 sports. Right. And down south, they played baseball and maybe one other. So there was that. But Mike was a great guy. He was. We lived in connecting apartments. He liked to listen to heavy metal. I remember that. He loved baseball. I mean, he'd sit in there. And so one time I was like, come on, Mike, let's go out and have a little fun. You know, you've seen the 30 for 30s. Yeah. So I got him talked into going out. And we walk out, and I can't find my car. And I'm like, gosh, dang it. Where is my car? Why would they steal my car? And at this time, I had a Monte Carlo that year. And I was looking around. I was mad. I thought it was stolen. And then I remembered I drove it to the campus bar on Thursday. And I never did that. And of course, it got towed. So our one night out, getting Piazza out to have a little fun. But a friend of mine, Andy Wolf, who Trevor knows, just sent me a picture about a month ago with Piazza at a card show. But he's a good dude. I've always wanted to try to get him to come back here. I think he'd love it, do a baseball thing. Yeah. And I haven't given up on that. But there's others. I can't get into all of them, you know. Oh, Testaverde. I had one with Testaverde. We were kind of going out with 2 gals that were roommates, and he'd get a lot of fan mail. And so he goes, read this, Doug. And it was a letter from some gal. Oh, yeah. He's like, call her and say you're me. I'm like, really? He said, yeah. So I call this poor gal up, and I'm like, hey, this is Vinny, you know. Yeah. I see that you like whatever, you know, and I could pull stuff right from the letter. So she really thought it was, but we had a good time with that.
Yeah, there's if you want to know what went down in Miami, look at the U 30 for 30.
Yeah.
And the stories he's told me, and they're not all safe for podcasts, no. and nor should they be broadcast over. But Miami was a good time in the late 80s.
It sure was. I was blessed. I played in a JUCO World Series at Santa Fe, finished 3rd, and then played in the College World Series with Miami, and we finished 3rd also. Got beat by Stanford on a error in the last inning.
That's a hard way to go.
It is a hard way to go.
Well, anything else you want to talk about, Doug?
No, I think it went well.
Yeah, it was right about an hour. That's what we always like to go to.
Pretty natural. I think it's going to be a very entertaining game, like Ryan said. I'd tune in definitely because it may be one of the best ones.
Yeah. So, all right. Thanks a lot, Doug, and we'll get back with you. Trevor should be back next week. Don't do that. But thanks a lot, Doug, for joining us, and we'll talk next week. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. And be safe, and we'll talk next week.
Merry Christmas.